The Pseudo Nerd Podcast.
Or a board game revolution, as I like to call it.
I've never heard you call it that, but
You've said it. You've now said it, I think, 4 times, and it is the title of the rundown.
Teetering between dude and dork.
From a physics or realistic standpoint, it makes more sense than this Death Star that can just, do that.
These friends discuss everything from sports
I hope you don't win a playoff game with your kicker scoring the most points.
to movies.
The whole idea of Hermione and Harry Potter, it's just like having the jock getting with the cheerleader to me.
To cheeseburgers.
Baconzilla is just an extra thing I'll have.
It's an added bonus, a little treat.
The 2 Baconzillas I get are the extra added treat.
This is the Pseudo Nerd Podcast with Josh Kaiser.
You come in there, scissor kick some people, do a spinneroonie, get tossed out.
Josh Haddock.
If you've never read the graphic novel and watched that, you walk away from it thinking about Batman and Batgirl instead of Batman and Joker.
And Kyle Hogan.
He's just bathing in his blood.
Get ready. The Pseudo Nerd Podcast starts now.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 61 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for June 2nd, 2017. I am Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Josh Haddix and Kyle Hoagland.
It was really, really good.
What is really good? I'm piggybacking off of you there.
You still throw me off with the new intros. I was so used to how you used to say it. It's it just throws me off.
Yeah.
There's just an unsettling thing about, I feel like knowing how you say it then helps me and Haddix know how to come into it. But because it's different, it's awkward. And I don't know. So I'm what's really good, guys? Hey.
I mean, it's just normal conversation, bros. If you can't have a normal conversation, you know.
Hey man, I was fine.
That's how normal conversations are. Whenever you're at a party or a soiree gala event, you're I'm Josh Kaiser, and joining me here are Josh Haddix and Kyle Hoagland, and then we come in hey, what's going on?
Well, that's a good friend introducing you to the group of people who might be there listening to our conversation. They might be like, well, I know this guy, but I don't know who those other 2 schmokes are. And then
Schmokes.
Speaking of awkward, real quick, did you guys have you guys been staying up with this news about Tiger Woods getting that DUI?
Vaguely. I mean, just by that I mean I've read a couple of headlines and I've seen his mugshot. So
I'll say I saw obviously when the news hit, I guess I just assumed he was drinking, but I guess it was just prescription drugs. He didn't blow anything at all for alcohol, but I got a kick out of I thought I misread this, but I guess the report said under saying the alphabet backwards, he said he couldn't say the national anthem backwards. And I'm like, God, I can't even say that. And this was on Reddit. And then I realized in the comment, the guy was like, yeah, the cop was asking him to say the alphabet backwards, and he kept thinking he meant national anthem. And that's how confused and out of it he was.
Wow.
And he kept saying I can't do that. And the cop's like, I'm not telling you to say the national anthem. I'm telling you to say the alphabet backwards.
I don't know. My only thing about that whole thing is, 20 years he hasn't had a single Dewey. I think he's been crushing it.
I don't think it'll hurt him too much. It wasn't. If it was alcohol related, I think it would have been worse. But
he's been a former golfer for almost a decade. I mean, really, he's been pretty irrelevant for a while.
Ever since he got caught with his wee out, it's been bad for him. So
yeah,
like he's Pee Wee Herman or something over here,
right? At least Pee Wee was able to bounce back after all that.
That's true.
Tiger has not been able to, unfortunately.
I mean, we've only given about 24 hours so far. Well, never. Oh no, you're not talking about the.
I'm talking about ever since
just in general. Yeah.
With his what do they call it? His addiction, his sexual addiction.
He got checked in for sex addiction. So.
Coming up in today's podcast, we will not be talking golf, Tiger Woods, or sex addiction, but we will in fact be breaking down the Cleveland Cavaliers, Golden State Warriors, Part 3 NBA Finals. We'll discuss the lead up, the matchups, and of course give our final predictions as Hougie has to debate between two of his favorite teams in all of basketball and which one he's sided with most today as the wind might be blowing.
So another week, another test your knowledge. Bad news, I guess, for the listeners. It is a sports-related test your knowledge. Although I feel like
at least not a baseball-related sports.
Yes,
one.
yes.
Yeah, I feel like basketball. It might be a little more middling. There's a little more discussion because the Cavs have been so relevant for the last couple of years, and then obviously the LeBron years. I think we've all be kind of rekindled. For those who may not have already had that love for basketball, I think the Cleveland side of us has had a rekindled basketball, love for the game.
What about your Golden State side of the game? I mean, that's been rekindled for you too, right?
I actually,
he grew up a Warriors fan. So.
You know what? I don't even mind other than Draymond Green, I hate Warriors fans. I think they're the biggest crybabies.
Draymond, but other than Draymond Green, you hate Warriors fans?
No. Sorry, other way. No, I don't mind the Warriors. I hate Draymond and the fans.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
There we go. All right, which we'll talk about later. We're trying to find out how baller you guys are in today's Test Your Knowledge. So little different setup this time around. We're gonna go one at a time. So. Kaiser, I'm assuming you won the last one because I think you win them all pretty much at this point. So would you like to go first or would you like to go second?
Let's see what's going on this time. I'm going to pass it to Haddix. I want to sit back and see
all
how
right, so all right, I'm going to need you to go into your soundproof chamber and then we'll call on you when he's done.
Oh, okay. I will be back then.
All right, Terminator.
I get it. All right, so Haddix, I got 15 records broken or achievements done in the last 3, or not want to say last 3 years. These are records held by either the Golden State Warriors or the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I want you to tell me whether or not this feat or record belongs to one team or the other. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and here we go. Most threes in a regular season.
Hold on, real quick. Is this like rapid fire or?
Yes, this is rapid fire.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
All right,
that's Warriors. That's Warriors.
Most threes in a regular season game.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go Cavs.
Most threes in a playoff game.
Warriors.
Most consecutive playoff wins.
Warriors.
Put up a triple-double with rebounds, steals, and blocks.
Rebounds, steals, blocks. Cavs.
Best home winning streak.
Warriors.
Most all-NBA selections in a single season.
Oh, shit. Warriors.
Most all-NBA first-team selections by a single player.
Cavs.
Quickest playoff berth.
Cavs.
Best record after first half of the season.
Warriors.
Best point differential after the first half of a playoff game.
Ooh. God, that's a tough... Cavs.
Most games with a player scoring 50 or more points.
Say that again. Most games.
Most games with a player scoring 50 or more points.
The same player, or just a player on the team scoring.
A player on the team scoring 50 points or more. Most games.
Crap. Warriors.
Most points in the playoffs all time by a player.
Cavs.
Finally, most NBA titles won after being down 3-1.
Cavs.
All right. Come on back, Kaiser. We're summoning him back from the chamber right now.
Was that 15?
That was 15.
Oh, shit.
All right, I'm here.
Okay, so the score to beat is 11 out of 15.
Wow.
So it's a kind of a rapid succession. I am going to give you a record or an achievement done by a player or the whole team in general, and you need to tell me whether or not that is a Cavs record or a Warriors record.
Okay.
Okay, and here we go. Most threes in a regular season.
Warriors.
Most threes in a regular season game.
Cavaliers.
Most threes in a playoff game.
Cavaliers.
Most consecutive playoff wins.
Warriors.
Put up a triple-double with rebounds, steals, and blocks.
Rebound, steals, and blocks. Warriors.
Best home winning streak.
Warriors.
Most all-NBA selections in a single season.
Warriors.
Most all-NBA first-team selections by a single player.
Cavaliers.
Quickest playoff berth.
Warriors.
Best record after the first half of a season.
Warriors.
Best point differential after the first half of a playoff game.
Cavaliers.
Most games with a player scoring 50 or more points.
Read that one again.
Most games with a player scoring 50 or more points in it.
Cavaliers.
Most points in the playoffs of all time by a player.
Cavaliers.
Finally, most NBA titles won after being down 3-1.
Cavaliers.
All right, so Haddix had 11. Kaiser, you ended with 13.
Whew.
So you both missed most consecutive playoff wins. You both said you both said the Warriors. The answer is Cavs.
Dating back to last year.
Dating back to last year.
I debated that one.
What was the question?
Most consecutive playoff wins. You both said Warriors.
Most consecutive playoff wins.
Right. The Cavs
Right.
had more because if you date back to the 3 they won last year, they would have won.
Oh, God.
And then carried over. Yep.
That's a trick question right there.
I debated in my head, but I can see where you're going. It's true.
Right. And then the other ones that were missed, put up a triple-double with rebounds, steals, and blocks. Kaiser, you got that. That was Draymond Green this year.
Right, yep.
Quickest playoff berth, that was the Warriors as well. Most games with a player scoring 50 or more points. Haddix, you said Warriors.
I said Cavs.
Kaiser, you said Cavs. That was Wilt Chamberlain, had the vast majority of those when he played for the Warriors.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. The rest of them you guys pretty much nailed together. But regardless, I said 8-3. Hey, it's only May, right, guys?
It is actually June now as of this podcast. So.
Yeah, seriously, come on.
Oh,
Hougie.
God. I got to peek behind that curtain. Yeah, you're right. It is June. So, well.
Hey, we're
well,
halfway
that's good.
there.
We're halfway there.
We're halfway there.
In the words of Bon Jovi, is that correct?
We're halfway there, and Haddix, you and Test Your Knowledge are living on a prayer. All right. It has been over 82 games of a regular season. We've gone through 3 rounds of the playoffs, and we are exactly where I think everybody pretty much thought we would be starting a tip-off of the season last year, and that is with a Cavaliers Golden State Warriors NBA Finals, and that's what we're breaking down today. And I guess what we should start with, guys, before we kind of get into the matchups and then finally ultimately our predictions, is kind of the biggest storylines. You know, what you know, when you think Cavs Warriors Part 3, what are the stories that stick out to you? Because, I mean, let's be honest, there's no short list of narratives that you can look towards when you look at these two teams. So, Hougie, we'll start with you. You know, what stands out to you is, you know, the big storyline going into this game?
Well, I mean, I think the most interesting one is everybody at full power this time around. I feel like every year there's always been a question of, is this person healthy? This person, kind of, I guess, kind of dealing with an injury of some sort. Year one, we lost Kevin Love throughout basically the whole playoffs. We lost Kyrie after game one of the finals. Last year, they were saying that Iguodala was hurt and Steph Curry had a bad ankle and a bad knee. And they were going for that 73 win record, so they were all tired. And so I think now there really is no excuse, especially with the fact that they grabbed Kevin Durant, arguably the second best player in the league, for the sake of they think that at full power they couldn't take on LeBron James and the Cavs. So I think at this point there's no real excuse. Whoever wins is going to be the dominant, should be considered the dominant team. Although I do find it kind of sad that I wish KD was not on the team. I would have loved for it to be the team we took on last year at full power. I think that would have told a much better story than throwing in Kevin Durant.
Well, so I think you kind of got almost two big storylines right there, in my opinion. And I agree they're both very important, worth mentioning. In the first, obviously, if you look at a Cavs, if you ask a Cavs fan, what happened in 2015? Man, if we had Kevin Love, if we had Kyrie Irving for that full series, could they have won it? And there's an argument that could be made that they could have, because LeBron put that team of pretty much Matthew Dellavedova and a bunch of other people and, really fought for that series. And then, of course, last year, you ask Warriors fans and they'll say Steph wasn't himself. To your point, Iguodala they were all kind of nagging injuries. So for me, the fact that both teams are healthy is huge and makes a very big, it takes out that excuse. You can't say now, of course, if someone goes and rolls their ankle in game one, then, that's a whole nother issue. But coming into it, there's no injuries. And I agree with you. Obviously, the Kevin Durant story is a huge one too, but you'd almost like to have seen the rubber match without Kevin Durant, of basically a roster of the two teams that have played each other the last 2 years without someone of that kind of firepower.
They won 73 wins without him. They won a title without him. And it's just one of those, I don't know, it's a completely, I mean, once again, we're talking more about the playoffs and talking about KD. I just think that's such a, from a Warriors fan perspective, obviously you want the second best player in the world, but from a national, standpoint and the NBA standpoint, that's such a weak move to be up 3-1 against the Warriors when you were playing on another team, barely, and you screw it up and you lose the 3 in a row, and then you join the team that beat you. That's just, I don't know, that just it seems weak to me.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of discussed that in full length in our NBA preview podcast back in December, which if you want to go back and listen to it, go back and give us a listen there. I think that was episode, I want to say 48 maybe. It's in the archives. But, yeah, I mean, there's plenty you could say about Kevin Durant and what he did joining the Warriors. I don't think there's anybody out there that thought, man, that Kevin Durant sure should took the hard route by going over there and joining the team that was arguably the best team. They put the best regular season record up, and were one shot one way or the other from winning a second back-to-back title. So the Durant thing is a frustrating aspect of it, but here he is, and here they are.
Well, on that note, though, I feel like with his injury that kept him out for a little while, it really did kind of go to show, and I know it started as a joke, but that whole the Warriors didn't really need him on their team. They just needed him not in Oklahoma. And it kind of showed a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically wanted to – that series – I feel like that series really took it out of the Warriors. To go back-to-back with Oklahoma and then the Cavs, that's tough. So basically they just made it easier for themselves to sweep the West, which they clearly did. And now they're sitting pretty against the Cavs. So I guess it worked.
Well, speaking of sweeping the West, and we were basically one Avery Bradley 3 buzzer beater from potentially
a clunker of a 3 also.
Yeah, one that just it milked 4 seconds off the clock while it was bouncing around. Prevented us from having a 12-0, a potential 12-0 versus a 12-0 finals, which would have been huge. That said, how different do you think? I mean, the storylines, you can say that the Eastern Conference is weaker and LeBron pretty much and the Cavs coasted their way into a finals. And I'm not going to argue that. But then you look at what the Warriors had to do, and they pretty much coasted their way into the finals because they played teams that, they played the weaker teams that the Western Conference had in their playoffs, with the exception of the Spurs. But unfortunately, by the time the Spurs got to the Warriors, and including Game 1, without Leonard and Tony Parker, they're probably two of their best players. They were easily there to coast as well. So how much do you guys put into the 12-0, 12-1 runs that these two teams had coming into the finals?
It was completely uninteresting. Once again, I think everybody knew what it was going to be. I mean, they're going to give their best going up against the Warriors and the Cavs, but this was destiny. And the problem too, like everyone, even like Draymond Green, and he even said like the Cavs that the East is so much weaker, they have much easier time, and it's like, what a hypocrite, because you just swept everybody that you went through, and then you're talking about how they gave you a better run for your money than the Cavs. Like better, like you actually played those teams and you didn't. But really, if you look at it, like two of the Portland's best players, next other than Lillard, they were out for the whole series. Then they took on Utah, where Gordon Hayward was dealing with an injury, and then Gobert was also hurt for the first 3 games. And then once, like you said, then you go take on the Spurs, that are not the Spurs. It's not the same Spurs team. And Kawhi Leonard, hurting his ankle basically just made that into a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, not to mention the Spurs were up by 23. Something like that. When Leonard went down. So, I mean, that's a whole that series could be completely different. So, it is a shame that we didn't get to see that Spurs Warriors matchup that could have been much more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, here we are. We got two teams that are basically walked their way into a championship. And I mean, like I said at the beginning of the year, I think this was pretty much everybody's. It's Cavs and Warriors. And Warriors adding Durant. I think people thought from the beginning, like, this is going to be the matchup, and the Warriors are all but they were that close to winning a championship last year. They won the year before, and they added Kevin Durant. Like, how does the team not just win again? So, go ahead.
Real quick back to the 12-1, 12-0 thing. Nick Wright, I'm sure you guys have probably heard of him, and he's like always on Facebook because he's a big LeBron
guy. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but he pointed out that in the past 3 years, when the Warriors won, lost to us, and then this year, the Warriors have only played 2 teams at full health, and that was the Cavs when they lost, and the Warriors that they almost lost to. Every other team they played had some injury that had a big impact, not just like some jobber on the bench. You know what I'm saying? That's hurt. So I mean, that just goes to show how lucky they've gotten, and that is part of the game. Luck's part of the game, but how lucky they've gotten to be where they're at
is part of the game too. So sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's almost. I think while we all figured it'd be Warriors Cavs, it's kind of disappointing at how dominating both these teams were in the playoffs. It was very anticlimactic.
Yeah, I mean,
but you also see though that if it's that dominating, like, I think that's what we wanted to see. So the faster we get to it, then, because let's be honest, if for whatever reason the Celtics just came out of nowhere and beat the Cavs, and it's the Celtics versus the Warriors, is anybody watching that series? No.
Well, I'm watching it right on the Celtics.
I was going to say Boston fans and Golden State fans, but outside of that, no, it's not. It's not going to be heavily watched because it's not.
But I mean, how heavily watched is this going to be for the average basketball fan who? Oh my God, this is the third.
I think it'll be huge because I think first of all, believe it or not, this is the first time in NBA history that there will be a third time in a row for a matchup.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for the Milwaukee Bucks or somebody like that,
it was actually the Warriors and Sixers back in the 60s that split up what would have been potentially 5 in a row for the Lakers.
I thought in the 80s too. I thought it was Lakers Celtics. It would have been 6 years in a row, but the third one was the Bucks and Lakers.
Oh, it may have happened again there because it happened in in '67. The Warriors and Sixers split up was what would have been 5 straight for the Lakers Celtics. So could have also happened again there. But this is so. With all the the repeats and the three-peats and all these teams and these dominant teams in the past, we've never had the same matchup 3 years in a row. And actually, I think I read a stat that there's never been in a major sports championship 3 matchups back to back to back like that since like 1920, and it was like some random sport back then. So it is kind of interesting in that regard that this is the first, trilogy, if you will, for a sports championship.
Yeah, this is like the first true like Battle of the Titans type of scenario where
they're the football team in Tennessee, dude. I don't know what they have anything to do with this.
Damn it, I keep forgetting about that. But what also makes it interesting is that it's the rubber match. It wasn't like the Warriors won the first 2, and now the Cavs are just trying to limp in and maybe steal one. No, this is going to be the rubber match, along with having roughly the 3 best players in the league, your last 3 years of MVP on one team versus arguably the greatest player alive right now. And so, I mean, yeah, no one would have been interested if one of these teams somehow didn't make it to the finals. It would have been drastically,
absolutely
less exciting.
I mean, and this is a grudge match. To your point, these teams don't like each other. It was obviously noticeable in the past, in the finals last year, when Clay called LeBron soft, and there was all those comments about him, something about him being a dad or something like that, and then just the Draymond suspension, LeBron walking over him. I mean, these teams don't like each other. And then after the Cavs won it, and LeBron wearing the Ultimate Warrior T-shirt, and then the Halloween party where he had the tombstones with the 3-1 lead on it, and I mean all these little things. I mean, this is trash talking between the two teams. I mean, this is a WWE like storyline that we're able to write into sports here, and I think the casual NBA fan, I think when KD joined the Warriors, that was enough to make the Warriors an already probably hated team outside of the Bay Area that much more hated. And, the Cavaliers, who probably at one point could have been a hated team because, you got LeBron James and you've got the, Kevin Love joining them to, kind of make a super team. Now they're all of a sudden, they're the underdogs with the greatest player on the planet. And they've, it's that underdog story against the giant Warriors team. So I think there's a lot of stories here that can make it an exciting and interesting matchup for teams outside of Cleveland and Golden State as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another List Twist List segment brought to you by Sierra Mist. Insist on the twist. I know you guys like that. That was a really good voice and everything, wasn't it?
You've been practicing that for a while, haven't you?
Am I listening to late night smooth jazz?
That was a real good, dude. That's
going to be on his resume for NPR. He's applying for a job next week. So,
God, this is a good spot to jump in with this segment. I'm going to do something slightly different. Yesterday, well, we're recording this Tuesday, so Monday on Memorial Day, I was listening to The Herd, and he had a guest on there his name was Rob Parker. He was like a sports anchor and a columnist in Detroit. I think he's done some work on ESPN. I didn't really recognize the guy, but it was more of what he said. I'm not going to tell you exactly word for word what he said, but I have some bullet points here. So I'm going to kind of turn it into a little bit of a list, run through these bullet points, and you guys tell me if you agree with him or not. And then I'm going to end kind of with a quote from him that kind of sums up the whole thing and see what you guys think about that. So, you guys ready?
Yeah,
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So this gentleman was asked whether or not LeBron is better than Michael Jordan, which has been a huge topic. You can go back and forth, whatever. So here's some of the things
people
that he
debate this
said.
probably till the end of time.
Yes, yeah. So here's some of the things that he said. He thinks that LeBron's biggest fear was that he'd be one of the greatest players to never win a championship. So he bailed on Cleveland. And doing so, altered and manipulated the balance of the NBA when he joined Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. You guys agree with that?
I agree that he was definitely when LeBron left Cleveland, it was a couple of things. One, I think definitely he didn't want to ever be that. What if he's that one of the greats to play the game and never win a championship? Kind of like we've seen a Dan Marino or something like that in the past,
or Charles Barkley.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, Barkley, that's a good one, more relevant to the sport. But I also think that he realized Cleveland was at a point where we weren't in a position to ever get him where he wasn't. He couldn't do it all on his own. You need somebody else out there, and the roster that was set in place, he's watched it change multiple times, and it never got to that next level that he saw with the Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce level, things like that. And, or the Spurs at the time with Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, etc. So I think he definitely needed to get away and get himself positioned with players that, the minute you add Dwayne Wade even to your team, you're increasingly better than anything he ever had as a number 2 in Cleveland. So I agree to that to a degree.
So you don't think he bailed? You think he strategically left?
Yeah, word it however you want. I think they're kind of... But I'm not going to disagree with the word bailed. I'm fine with that. But I think there was more behind it than just ditching Cleveland. I think it was he needed to get himself in a better position.
I think LeBron understood that there were two teams, one on the East and one on the West, that completely outclassed the Cavaliers, no matter how good of a record that they had. I think the Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen acquisitions to the Celtics, I think that's what changed the landscape. That already kind of started it kind of already started, testing the waters of players going where they want to go in order to win championships versus representing your team and, going through thick and thin and staying on one team or just kind of going where the money is. Because I'm pretty sure the Celtics weren't able to give max contracts to all three of those guys. They kind of all agreed to probably take a little bit less because basically the Celtics were guns for hire. And they went in there and they got that title. But ultimately, LeBron understood that right now and for the foreseeable future, Dan Gilbert doesn't seem like, or I keep forgetting what the GM's name for the Cavs. It didn't seem like that they were going to give him what he thinks he needed, so he went somewhere where it was going to fit. Now, whether or not that's a bailout, that I guess you can say it was, but really, that's not unheard of. Once again, he's adapting to what he understands as becoming the new NBA, which is basically the creation of the super team.
So on that point, I'm glad you ended on that because that was kind of Colin's fire back. He said that no talent as good as LeBron James has ever left a team in the prime of their career. Barkley, Peyton, Malone, Shaq. Garnett didn't go to the Celtics until his 13th year in the NBA. So they were all past the peak of their prime. Not that they were like wash-ups, although
they were still all NBA players, though.
But I would disagree with. I think Shaq went to the Lakers. You're saying he wasn't in the prime of his career when he went to the Lakers?
I think he was past the peak of his prime, I think is what he was saying.
Disagree completely.
Whereas when LeBron went to Miami, I don't think he had hit the prime of it. I think LeBron hit the prime of his career in Miami.
I agree with that, but there's some debate that LeBron's hitting his prime now. There's so many arguments, but I do think LeBron's prime was in Miami.
Yeah.
Remember, I think people seem to forget that Shaq only played 4 years with the Magic. He was 24, 25 when he went to the Lakers. He was definitely in his prime with the Lakers.
But I don't think Shaq wins without Kobe. You know what I'm saying?
I think
so.
I don't think Kobe wins without Shaq.
And very well could be. Very well could be. But also on that topic of him going to Miami and leaving, if he doesn't do that, he says Durant never leaves Oklahoma City if LeBron doesn't go to Miami first. He kind of set the way, set the trend for these teams, these all-stars to get up and leave.
I mean, it's a big what-if game there.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because of the Chris Paul veto trade.
I will say
that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I think I'm with you, Kyle. But I think for me is I don't think I could see Durant still leaving Oklahoma City. He might. I don't necessarily think he goes to the Warriors at that point. He might go to the Wizards or something like that. There's always talk about him going to Washington. So there's. I don't think he stays necessarily in Oklahoma City, but he might not go to Golden State without LeBron doing that first.
I've noticed a lot of players stay in the other than maybe like Shaq, but a lot of these players who go in their later careers, usually they stay in the same conference. I think that's more of a comfort thing. Once again, we got to think of it too. The Warriors, they kind of created their team homegrown style. They really didn't sign a whole lot of guys. A lot of these guys were drafted. I think that as long as everything goes
they
the
lucked
same
themselves
course,
into a good position with Steph Curry's contract at the time because he had been coming off an injury and wasn't the MVP level guy he was at the time. So he's on a big player friendly contract too. Like you said, they drafted Klay Thompson and Green, and some of these guys coming over, Iguodala. They bring these guys over there and they kind of all of a sudden found the fountain of youth or kind of replayed their old, the way they were, played years ago. So they've really put themselves, it's a little bit of luck and some great positioning to put themselves in that position.
So I don't agree that LeBron started it or he was the father of this move. I do agree that with LeBron doing it, cemented the fact that it's okay if the face of the NBA is going to go ahead and go where he wants to go. And once again, I am not against players going where they want to go. I've never felt like if you think it's a better fit for you to go somewhere else, if there was something wrong in Oklahoma City, you felt that you were being handcuffed, you felt like that was the best you were going to do against the Spurs and the Warriors of the West. I get it. I think I guarantee you if the Warriors, if Durant lost in the playoffs and wasn't against the Warriors, let's say they lost in the second round against somebody else. Let's say they lost to the Spurs and he joined the Warriors. I don't think it would have been as big a thing as the fact that he lost to them and joined them.
Well, not only did he lose to them, he lost after they were up 3-1.
Yeah,
they were one game away from an NBA Finals. And so you look at that and it's like, man, he was the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was their franchise. They were that close to beating this Warriors team that was unbeatable last year. And then he turns around and says, you know what? It's not going to happen. I'm going to jump ship. Like, well, it almost happened. You were that close to it. So, I agree, Kyle, if they had done it, if he had left, they lost to somebody else in an earlier round or whatever, it would be like, oh, that sucks. Why'd he go to the Warriors? But it wouldn't be the backlash he saw. But there's a reason for the backlash he got. And I do think it's worse than, in many ways, than what LeBron did to Cleveland.
Oh, it's way worse.
So that kind of leads into this point. I'm going to rail these last two off real quick and give you guys this final quote and then get your final thoughts here real quick. But back to what Hougie said about it being okay because LeBron did it. He went into his next point about Popovich kind of started, the head coach of the Spurs, for those who don't know, is kind of blamed for starting the whole resting your starters during the season to get them ready for the playoffs. Then LeBron started doing it, which caused all the other players to do it because he's kind of the leader. It's obviously, like we've all seen, led to a lot of those old school players like a Karl Malone kind of speaking out against it, saying that they would have never sat at all if they were able to play, et cetera, et cetera. And kind of back to what we were talking to earlier, his next point was that the NBA is the worst league to watch right now because of the lack of competition. We all could have guessed that this is going to be Warriors, Cavs. Same two teams in the finals for the past 3 years, and it'll most likely be the same two teams for the next 3 years. And the reason that LeBron is going to 7 straight finals is not because him and Steph are the greatest ever to play, but because there's nobody else in their way. And this is the quote. This was his quote directly from him about LeBron and Michael. When LeBron leaves the NBA, he will have left it in ruins and not elevated the game. When Michael Jordan left the NBA, all the kids wanted to be like Mike. People were playing at a high rate. And he kind of went on to talk about how it was kind of like Tiger with golf. Everyone started to want to golf. But when LeBron leaves, it's just going to be in disarray.
You know who I blame for the fact that people are sitting and resting for the playoffs and not really caring too much about the regular season? Karl Malone's era of basketball players. Because all they're going to talk about is how many rings do you have. When they're talking about who are the greatest of all time, they just look at count the rings. So if that's all that matters in the NBA, then why should you be worried about who's sitting? Unless people are chasing for MVP or season awards, why do you care? Wouldn't you rather have the best product you possibly can, well rested, for what actually matters? So I don't want to hear that from the mailman or Charles or Chuck or even Jordan, because yes, I understood that if he was healthy, he played 79 to 81. He played every season basically.
He played every game in his last season in the NBA.
Sure. Are you talking about for the Bulls?
Michael.
Or with the Wizards?
That I'm not sure. That was just part of this.
I would assume you're talking about the Bulls, which is fine. But once again, if all these younger kids coming up are being fed by these legends that it only matters about that ring, that's all that matters. So why should I care what Greg Popovich is doing, trying to keep his guys well rested? These guys are also in their mid-30s, his best players. Obviously, he wants them rested. But a guy like LeBron or anybody else, I do not want to hear it from those older guys to say that for those guys resting, because if all that matters is the rings, I'd rather not get hurt if I already like sealed the first seed or second seed or third seed. I don't care at that point.
Michael Jordan took 2 years off of basketball to play baseball. I'm sorry. I don't care that LeBron's taking a couple of games off here and there. The fact that he's doing it, and guess what? The Cavs are back in the finals. Then that means his thing of resting worked. Popovich rested his players. His team still won most of the time. And they're still one of the best teams in arguably the best franchise in the sport over the last 20 years. So these people want to sit here and complain that they're not playing every game. Guess what? The ultimate goal of the league is to win a championship year in and year out. LeBron's putting himself and his team in the best position by resting, and Popovich was doing it for the Spurs. If the Warriors want to rest their people, guess what? If they rest their players and they lose a game or something like that, and next thing you know, they fall out of a seed and they lose because of it, then you can start, second guessing him. But guess what? It's working right now, and I'm not going to blame him one bit for doing it, because ultimately the goal, like Kyle said, it's to win a championship, it's to win rings, and that's what they're doing.
And then once again, LeBron has led the league pretty much every year since he's been in the league in minutes played. So I don't want to hear it either. That man is going to end his career probably being among the top 3 in scoring, probably top 5 in assists, if not even higher, top 10 in rebounds, and probably most minutes played. So I don't want to hear about how many games he's rested. When he plays with pretty much maybe 3 minutes of rest.
Well, there you have it. I agree with some of the stuff you guys have said and disagree with others, but we'll leave that to the imagination. So for everyone out there, enjoy those Sierra Mists.
All right, now that Hougie has called out the mailman, let's go ahead and move on.
And I'm jaded now.
You've been put on notice, Carl.
I was going to say, Karl Malone. While many of our PM peers are now looking forward to the Karl Malone, Carl Hoagland matchup, let's discuss the other matchups that are going to be taking place in the finals, and which ones are the ones you guys are most looking forward to. Obviously, the easiest thing to start with is what's different from this year's finals to last year's finals, or the finals before that. And the big name, of course, is Kevin Durant, and that's not something we should overlook by any means. But I think we've kind of discussed it a little bit in depth. We can kind of add a little bit here and there if we want to throw it in there. But the other additions that these teams have added, who stands out to you guys as the players to watch that might be the new guys to the team, or somebody who wasn't in the finals last year that's out there now, that other than Kevin Durant that shows up?
First off, Karl Malone would murder me. He knows the diamond cutter. And second of all, the guy I'm looking out for, as much as people have been making fun of him, he's been probably one of the most notorious guys on the internet for some of his follies. But JaVale McGee, left to his own devices, is actually a very, very talented player, and a guy that they sorely needed as far as a rim protector ever since they lost Andrew Bogut, and then the Cavs got Andrew Bogut, and then we lost Andrew Bogut. But yeah, JaVale McGee, he's like 7'2", and a decent defender, and a guy who's definitely capable of scoring. A guy I wouldn't put him like one-on-one with anybody, but definitely a guy that
I put him like one-on-one against
space.
you. I mean, I think that's an easy matchup right there.
I mean, for him maybe, but yeah, I think that it was a great get for them because he's raw talent, and I think that someone like Steve Kerr could mold him into something better than Shaq in a full. The last 3 or 4 years he's been in the league.
Top, and I think it's worked out well. I mean, McGee has played some of his best basketball, with the Warriors this year, and it's like Iguodala a couple years ago. Like all of a sudden, these players who were kind of almost forgotten about, for lack of a better word, they've come around and they've really re-energized and rejuvenated.
It helps your mojo
careers
when you're winning. Let's put it that way. I mean, JaVale McGee went from, I think it was like the Wizards when they weren't that good, kind of like the first couple of years of John Wall, to the Nuggets, to the 76ers, to the Mavericks. So I mean, he really wasn't on any team that was going to, help build up his career. So he got into a very great situation with the Warriors,
and he's taken complete advantage of it. So I agree, he's a big name to watch. How about you, Haddix? Is there somebody who sticks out to you?
I mean, I think the 3-point shooters that the Cavs added, it was no secret after the past 2 years what the Warriors were good at, and that's shooting the 3-ball. So the smart teams like the Cavs added a bunch of 3-point shooters to their team, along with LeBron James and beast on the boards like Tristan, and you upped your chances of winning. And their 3 points, their 3-point percentage has gone up this year. I think they have. Crap, I was reading it earlier. I think it's like they have the highest, either the highest percentage or the highest, or the most. Crap, I can't remember exactly what it was. Something really good with threes. So, you know what I'm saying?
there you have it, guys.
Something
better than the Warriors this year. So,
well, I think too. I think the only team that was better than the Cavs at overall 3-point efficiency were the Rockets, who just that's all they did was shoot the 3-ball.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there you go.
That's what happens when D'Antoni's your coach.
But I think that was smart of them. They realized that basically the Warriors were playing small ball last year and the year before. They managed to pull it out 2 years ago, almost win last year. So they figured, let's do the same. So they got Corver, Darren Williams, who can shoot pretty well also. So, you got to give him credit on that.
And Darren Williams he's had a very good playoff run this year with the Cavs in his coming off the bench role. He's really kind of helped give that bench a little bit of, needed skill into scoring. And, Corver, obviously, when Corver's hot, the dude can't miss, and he'll try. I think he finished second or first or something in 3-point percentage for the regular season. So obviously those were huge adds by the Cavs and shouldn't be overlooked by any means. And then of course, Kevin Durant obviously is going to be the big X factor, and you could argue he's the top 3-4 player in the NBA right now. And to have him added to that team, that's not something that's not Harrison Barnes over there now that the Cavs can just leave to shoot wide open shots and miss in the finals. So that's going to be a tough go at for the Cavs to play defensively. And
he's hard, I'll say he's hard to guard. He's long.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I probably at this point see LeBron guarding Kevin Durant. I don't remember. I know, these two teams matched up twice in the regular season, once in Cleveland on Christmas Day, which the Cavs eked out a win, and then once later in the year in Golden State, which I believe Golden State kind of blew them out. Both teams obviously in much different places in both, then compared to now. So it's hard to really say, how similar it's going to be or how they played back then is how they're going to look now. But you brought up a point earlier, Haddix, about Tristan Thompson. Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love. Tristan plays on another level when it comes to the playoffs. The way he's able to get, he gets his offensive rebounds, but he really he plays at it with a higher energy, I feel like. And Kevin Love has been playing probably his best basketball as a Cavalier the past couple playoff series that he's been in now. So those two are just gobbling up the boards, and
sorry.
God,
they're just gobbling up those boards.
Gobbling them up, man.
But then once again, those are two guys. Those are the two guys that you would need to step up, because I think you know what you're expecting with Kyrie and LeBron. So when you're telling us that the two guys that are really upping their game are the two guys, like, we really need them to up their game, because really, I mean, I'm not worried about Kyrie or LeBron. I think they're going to show up. They're gonna do just fine. Kevin Love was a big question mark last year overall in the series. I think he averaged like 11 for the whole series, if not worse.
Yeah, he didn't play very well. He played okay.
Tristan Thompson definitely earned his contract with the playoffs last year, and he hasn't slowed down. That man is just bionic. And then, I mean, other than that, you've got everybody else that you can kind of rely on. That at least you expect them to play well. So Kevin Love was the one thing I thought was, I really hope that this is really his time where he gets comfortable. And so far, so good.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I don't know if Kevin Love's played better basketball than he has in the last couple series he's been playing. And the Cavs are really going to need that in this game. And I really think that the Warriors are going to struggle underneath the rim. Now, if the Warriors are hitting all their shots like they could do on offense, it won't matter.
Yeah.
But I do think that's going to hurt them, and you're going to see that be the cause of a loss for the Warriors in a game or two, is losing that battle of the boards.
They better gobble them boards up, dude.
That's all I'm saying. They better. Like it's Turkey Day, man. Gobble those boards.
Well, I think what I'm really curious about is more of the defense side of things. Obviously both teams are capable of going off on points. However, the Warriors are a very good defensive team, and I think people keep forgetting about that.
Right.
And the Cavs are kind of the opposite of that. They are not. I wouldn't say they phone it in, but they are definitely more of score more than they score type of team. And there are a couple liabilities. There are times where LeBron can be the best defender in the planet, or sometimes LeBron kind of phones it in. Kevin Love, for the most part, is kind of a liability on the floor, especially if he's probably going to take on Draymond Green. That is a big mismatch. Draymond Green is going to have his way with Kevin Love, and the problem with that is that he's not a scorer. He's more of a facilitator, but you can't give Draymond Green an open shot. So
you saw what happened in Game 7 of that last year. Draymond Green was unstoppable. It's probably worth mentioning here. There's probably, coaching can come into effect in especially in playoff series where adjustments have to be made, especially as the series gets deeper and deeper into it. And Steve Kerr is basically out indefinitely. He's been battling really, really bad back injuries, and he pretty much has been removed from the majority of the playoffs. And that leaves former Cleveland Cavalier coach and coach of the year in Mike Brown. So what do you guys think about the Mike Brown, Tyronn Lue matchup that we're going to see from a coaching aspect? Do you think how much do you think that comes into play for the series?
It's about to be Mike Brown's revenge on the Cavs, dude. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he was fired from the Cavs twice. So,
oh god.
I mean, I don't think that. Mike Brown is a very good a really good pick for a backup coach. And I'm not, saying that Mike Brown's a fantastic coach, but at the same time, he's a guy that has knowledge of LeBron. He has coached. I'm not saying he's coached LeBron. I don't think anyone's ever coached LeBron. But I think he knows, the ins and outs of the way LeBron plays. I think that helps a little bit. I think that might have been a little bit of a thought process when they hired him, to know that Mike Brown was there for those years of him, this first run in Cleveland. As you said, he was a coach of the year, and I don't think they're going to miss a step without Steve Kerr. I'm sure he's going to be missed, but I think this team has so much talent around them that I think at this point Mike Brown is there just to kind of keep the composure going, and I think the team itself runs on autopilot with the I think they already have a good setup with Steve Kerr, that they don't need Steve Kerr there to actually deploy it onto the players. I think they're a smart enough team to do it on their own.
I think there's going to be a moment here and there where maybe a game is defined by a particular defensive adjustment or a rotation, and I think that's where Mike Brown is going to falter a little bit. And I do think he could get out coached by Lue. But if there's one guy that could stop LeBron's success, it's Mike Brown, because he did it for like 7 years as the Cavaliers head coach. So,
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you like that?
I see what you did there.
But I think it's just worth mentioning, anyways.
Yeah, I agree with that. Steve Kerr is a very good coach, and while I do agree with partly what you're saying, Hougie, that the team will probably, for the most part, run itself, I think when you're missing a coach that's as good as Steve Kerr, it will affect you in certain ways. So to your point, guys, I think we will see it maybe once or twice kind of rear its ugly head.
Okay, that said, as by no means, I know I'm not an X's and O's guy when it comes to basketball, but in your simplest forms, put on your Tyronn Lue hat, put on your Mike Brown glasses here, and tell me, what's your game plan if you're these guys? How are you going to, go out there and attack your opponent? How is it going to play down? What is your simplest game plan?
As for me, you got to try. You basically got to play some good tight defense. You're not going to stop the Warriors from. This is the Cavs, mind you. You're not going to stop the Warriors from scoring points. They're too good for that. You have to. All joking aside, you have got to get rebounds. You cannot let Golden State get offensive rebounds. It's tough when you're shooting threes because you get really, you get the long rebounds. But if you're giving Golden State 2-3 chances every time to score, they're going to score. So you've got to, you got to box out. You got to get rebounds. That's like the number one thing I feel like for the Cavs, because their defense isn't the greatest. So they're going to get open shots. They're going to score. You got to get rebounds. You got to gobble up those rebounds. That's like I feel like that's got to be the biggest thing for the Cavs.
For the Cavs defensively, they need to just keep the Warriors uncomfortable, make them keep passing. They're a big pick and roll team, and as long as they can just make it where they're keeping a hand in front of whoever's got the ball and not overcommitting. I don't mind if they try to get into the lane a little bit, because that's not, other than maybe Kevin Durant, that's not going to be their big thing. They're going to make sure they find whoever's open to take the shot. But I think as long as they keep Golden State out of rhythm, because they're a very streaky team, they always have been. Most shooting teams, ones that focus more on the long ball, rhythm is such a huge thing for teams like that. So I feel like as long as you're not getting hit with like a 16-0 run somewhere, I think the Cavs will always have a good chance of squeaking out a win no matter where they're at.
Yeah, I think all I'm going to add to that is basically if I'm the Cavs defensively, I'm going to try to stop Steph and Kevin Durant. And, at some point you got to let, somebody else is going to have to be the one to beat you. And I think it's going to be, McGee. You got to let players like that. Those are the ones that are going to have to try to beat you. I mean, that's what they did last year. They put it on Harrison Barnes and Iguodala, and there was one other guy. I can't think of who it is off the top of my head. They were the ones that they let them. They were the ones getting the open shots, and they were okay with that as long as they were moving the others. And at the end of the day, I hope the matchups. I hope it's good. I hope it's entertaining. I hope it's competitive. And as long as the matchup doesn't turn out to be like a blowout, like if it was Karl Malone versus Kyle Hoagland or something, we might be all right.
Poor Carl would get dominated in that matchup.
He would. Hoagie would be gobbling up all of those boards, right?
You know it.
All right. Welcome, PNPers, to this week's great debate. If you remember in our last 90-minute show, instead of a great debate, I discussed what rustled my jimmies, and that was the amount of previews and commercials and advertisements that went on before the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And we reached out to all of you to see how you felt. Was there too many previews? Were you okay with the amount? And it was a bloodbath, in the words of Kyle Hoagland, and it ended at a 50-50 tie. So I guess some people, felt that there was too much going on, and others, enjoy sitting there watching 40 minutes of not the movie they paid for. So who am I to judge, right?
Well, you kind of did with how you worded that.
Well, this week I will be a judge alongside my two cohorts here, as we're going to do a group great debate, and then of course we'll reach out on Twitter at @pseudo-nerdpod, so give us a follow there to look for our weekly or bi-weekly polls, I should say, and give us a vote after we discuss this week's poll topic. And that's this week's debate is going to be the MVP of the NBA season. And I think the four names worth mentioning: Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and LeBron James. Those are probably the four that should be discussed. And I guess before we go any further, do you guys have any other names that you think should be added to that list in place of anybody that I just named? And if not, then we'll start the debate on the four.
No.
Okay, perfect. I was hoping for that. Let's get into it. Hoagie, I'll start with you. Who would you say is your MVP of the NBA season this year?
I would, if I had to give it to it today, it would be James Harden. Do I explain why, or am I just saying I'm saying the name?
Oh, you can explain a little bit too. Yeah.
So James Harden, for a couple of reasons. One, he and his team overachieved. They were slated to barely maybe squeak by and get into the West as far as like an 8th seed. They end up getting the 3rd seed. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that James Harden just had just such a great breakout year for him. And not saying that he doesn't put up numbers, but this year just seemed different. Like Russell Westbrook had great numbers as well, but that was like in spite of how bad his team really was. They got the 6th seed when they were at one point, I think really the team itself really didn't go anywhere as far as getting better or worse. So, and also the fact that it's been pretty well chronicled that players were purposely not going for rebounds so that Westbrook would be able to average that triple-double. So I think there was some stat padding on the likes of Russell Westbrook. So the average and triple-double is all great and all. James Harden and his contribution to his team made his team better, put them in a position where they had the 3rd best record in the Western Conference when they were meant to probably just limp in barely. And then the only other person I can think of in that is, Kawhi Leonard, who is just like the silent guy that just plays great all the time and is in a great system. But I think this year James Harden deserved it.
All right, Hedix, how about you? Who's your guy?
Well, I think they're all great, and I can't disagree really with what Hoagie's saying. I don't know if this is home bias or what, but I mean, to me, it's like hands down LeBron. MVP isn't the person who scores the most or has the most triple doubles or anything like that, which, don't get me wrong, that's valuable to a team. But LeBron elevates his teammates everywhere, even when he's on the bench. I mean, he's a leader for his team. He's a leader off the court, on the court. I mean, he has elevated the city of Cleveland, the economy in Cleveland, by being on the Cavs. So, I mean, I just, to me, he's by far the MVP of the NBA season.
So it's interesting you say that, because I think my initial thought was to lean towards LeBron for that reason. You see where this team is when he sits, and you see where this team is in the playoffs now that he's basically flipped a switch, so to speak. But I think giving him the MVP for this year would be a disservice to the other guys on this list. And I say that because these other guys busted their asses all year long, while LeBron, for lack of a better word, he probably coasted in some of these games. And now when LeBron coasts, it's still at like an 80%. LeBron coasting at 80% is probably still better than half or 75% of the league playing at full. So, that some discredit is just that's credit to how good LeBron is. That said, for me, I think it's Kawhi Leonard, and the reason for it is because what you just said for LeBron James and what he is to that team and what that team is without him. You saw what that team was without Leonard when he went down in the Western Conference Finals. And for me, the MVP is a award given for how you played an entire season. And for me, how Leonard played and the success of that team is why he deserves it over LeBron, because while LeBron might, I can't argue LeBron is the most valuable player for the Cavaliers and probably for the whole Eastern Conference. For me, Leonard played more often and had this similar effect that LeBron would have had on the Cavaliers. And that's for me, Leonard is the winner in that regard. And stats are nice, and it's interesting to me that there's a good chance Russell Westbrook, for breaking the triple-double record, is going to win this award come June 26th when the announcement comes out. And the three of us all ignored him. So I thought that was kind of interesting to point out there.
Well, I mean, I do think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I don't think we're ignoring it. I just don't think that. I don't think those stats, as impressive as they are, really contributed to the success of the team as a whole. Now, for the whole season. I'm sure there are examples where that's wrong, and LeBron James, he is the victim of his own greatness. Like he is like, it would be kind of like, like a Jordan or a Wayne Gretzky, where clearly you're the best player on the planet every year, but you can't give – it's almost like you just can't give the award every year to the same guy. And that's where kind of LeBron is. There have been many years, when he didn't get when Derrick Rose got the MVP, that should have been LeBron's. The last three, I can understand KD getting it, and then the two times with Steph because it's just the breakout years. But I do agree, LeBron can't get it for the reasons I just gave and the reason you gave. He was resting a lot during the season. He was good, but he was great, but he wasn't MVP caliber. We know he's capable of it, and we know that overall he's a better player than these other three guys. But this is a season-long award.
Right, yeah, the debate is not who's the best player out of this list.
And I can't say Kawhi Leonard because, yes, I understand they got the second best record, but they're consistently – that's where they are. I mean, that's how good that overall that team is. And you can't – I feel like the voters can't look at what happened in the playoffs and then bump it up and give Kawhi the MVP because they saw something in the playoffs that really put a microscope on, wow, this team really is that lost without Kawhi Leonard.
No, it's
a realization, but it's a realization that you kind of found out when the regular season was already over.
Well, and, just as we, we'll have to wrap this segment up here in a second, but the point you made is the voters have to ignore the playoffs, and I kind of hate that at times, because if you ignore the playoffs, LeBron doesn't even make this list, I think, because he was LeBron in the regular season, but the Cavaliers team was just okay in the regular season.
Well, the best player in the world is always going to be on the list.
Well, sure.
So that's why he's on the list.
But, to me, if you look at the playoffs, Harden beating Westbrook in the with the Rockets defeating the Thunder, that's enough to put Harden above Westbrook for me. And that, is that fair? Is it not? I don't know. But the fact that the award ceremony is taking place after the finals and everything is over, it makes it interesting, because I think if LeBron James and the Cavaliers come out and defeat the Golden State Warriors in the finals, and LeBron is, a finals MVP yet again, you can look back and you're like, man, maybe he should be the MVP of the league this year. But I don't think he should win it, and I don't think he will win it. My vote is for Leonard. I think at the end of the day, Kyle, I agree with you. I think Harden does win it, but we'll have to wait and see on June 26th.
Here's my quick defense real fast of LeBron James. While everything you guys said is correct, he did sit a lot of games this year, which we alluded to earlier. He sat probably more games than he ever has, and the Cavs got the second seed instead of the first. And this isn't a award of who played the hardest or who played the most or who scored the most. It's who's the most valuable player. And I think that it's hands down LeBron James is the most valuable. I mean, again, if we kind of use the playoffs for it, the Cavs went 12-1, got the second seed and went 12-1 because LeBron James stepped it up in the playoffs. I mean, it's like it. While I agree with all you that he did sit a lot of games while these dudes were busting their balls, it's who's the most valuable person, and I think
you're taking that valuable too literal though sometimes, and
that's what it is. It's the most valuable player.
I don't think all the voters think that way.
Well, that's why they're wrong, because it's who is the most valuable player, not who played the best or the most or the hardest. It's who's the most valuable player. So there's my defense.
Well, that said, let's see what the voters known as our PMPers think. Go reach out. By the time this podcast will post, we'll have a poll up there, and we'll let you guys vote. Who do you think should win this year's 2016-2017 NBA MVP? James Harden, Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, or Kawhi Leonard? Let us know at Pseudo Nerd Pod. All right, we've had Kyle Hoagland call out the mailman, and now we've had Josh Haddix call out the NBA voters. So I think all we have left now is to leave our predictions on the NBA Finals, because things are getting heated on the PMP podcast this week. So let's just we've kind of talked our matchups. Let's start with this before we get into the finals. Our final predictions and all that. Ultimately, what or who are your X factors in this series? What stands out for you guys?
I'll go ahead and allude to what I said earlier. Rebounding. I think the team that rebounds the best wins. As dumb as that sounds, defensive rebounds.
It's all about fundamentals.
If the Cavs can gobble up them boards, I think they greatly increase their chances of winning. And if the Warriors are able to do that, I think they greatly increase their chance.
I think the X factor right now, and I know this may seem like he can't really be much of an X factor because of how good he is, just from the definition of an X factor, is Klay Thompson.
He was my X factor as well.
He's not been playing well throughout the playoffs, but once again just shows how amazing this team is, that they could have at one point was their second best scorer on this team, and one half of the Splash Brothers. He goes cold for pretty much. I mean, as far as if you look at the stats, maybe he's had good games where he's been passing the ball and playing decent defense because he is a very good defender. But they didn't bring him on this team to be a medium defender and pass the ball every once in a while. He's supposed to be a high profile scorer, and thank God they have Kevin Durant because he has not been. He has not. I wouldn't say he hasn't shown up. I don't know if maybe he's just been a little icy. I don't know what it is, but I think if everyone else is playing the way the playoffs have kind of been dictating, if he gets hot in the finals, I can't see, unfortunately, the Cavs being able to go against that much firepower at once.
So it's interesting, Kyle, because when I was going to bring up my X Factor, I had two names written down: Klay Thompson for the Warriors and J.R. Smith for the Cavaliers. And I think for very much the similar reasons, J.R. Smith, much like Klay Thompson, yeah, they've been playing great defense, but offensively they haven't done much of anything. To your point, Klay's really been struggling. And J.R., I mean, he's averaging right now in the postseason 6.5 points a game, which is, nothing. He's had 2 games out of the 13 that they've played where he scored double digits. In a couple of games, he's scored 6, in most of the games, scored 6 or less points. So, J.R. Smith was a huge asset to this team last year. And, ultimately, they've had a lot of success this year, much in part really without much to do with JR. Now, again, defensively, he's been very helpful to them, but, you would like to see him have a couple of those games where he hits 20, 25 points, something like that. So for me, if it's JR and Klay, if one of those guys comes out of their slump or kind of breaks out to the guy that they can be, look out to the other team. So those are my X factors in this series. You guys make much about the home field advantage, the home court advantage. Golden State has it this year. Are you, if you're a Cleveland fan, are you upset or worried about that? Or are you just, they won last year without home court, so it is what it is?
No, they're comfortable. They did it last year. They had to go back and beat the Warriors in Oracle twice, the last 2 home games there. So no, I don't. It's not bigger than them, the home court advantage. Maybe if it was some other team who hasn't been there, but since this is the 3rd time that they're going to have a 7-game series going back and forth between Cleveland and Oakland, I don't think where they play matters for either team, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I agree with Hougie. I think both teams excel past where they play.
I agree. And also, I think LeBron, I remember reading a stat, I don't have it in front of me, his record he just keeps extending his record for the most playoff series where he has a win in the opponent's home court. So obviously, he doesn't shy away from that challenge. And they won twice last year in Golden State in the playoffs. That's a tough place to play, and they were able to do it in Game 5 and Game 7, which are, arguably 2 of the biggest games that you can, have. And that one...
They were both elimination games for the Cavs.
Right, exactly. Elimination games. They're, they always say, Game 2, Game 5, Game 7. Those are the big games. And for the Cavs to, win 5 and 7, elimination, on the road in Gold State, like that doesn't bother me at all. Bring on that home court in the Oracle, and let's see what happens. That said, I think it's worth mentioning before we kind of get into our final thoughts and predictions, LeBron's legacy. He's currently now 3-4 in the NBA Finals. He is playing now Golden State for the 3rd straight year. Arguably, they had the history-making team last year, and they added Kevin Durant. If LeBron loses, how much does this hurt his legacy? And if he wins, how much does it help it? Where does it stand for you on his win or loss in this finals?
I think the little caveat he has is if they do lose, there'll always be that, oh, well, Golden State had to go get Durant, to beat LeBron. They basically had to stack the deck against LeBron to win. I don't think it'll hurt too much unless they get blown out. Unless it's like a 4-0, 4-1 deal. I don't think it'll hurt too much, especially since, I don't see LeBron James going anywhere for the next few years, 5-6 years, whatever, maybe even longer. I don't know. But I think there will always, if this was the same Warriors team as last year, there would be a lot more on the line. But I think, there's that little, well, you guys had to go get Durant, one of those types of deals.
Once you got KD on the Warriors, LeBron's playing with house money. And if LeBron wins, I think it totally blows out any idea of not saying he's not saying he's like the greatest of all time, but you can't argue that LeBron has had to win titles with tougher teams than Jordan ever did in the finals. I think the worst he ever had to deal with in the finals was maybe twice with the Jazz. But other than that, they played the Trailblazers. They played the aging Lakers, and then they played, I think, the Sonics, who are a good team. But once again, that's kind of how I see LeBron will have to beat the greatest regular season team of all time, and then basically same exact team with the second best player in the world on the team as well. If he can pull this off, then there has to be a real discussion, because everybody wants to talk about, he's only 50% in the finals. I think people seem to forget that Jordan couldn't get past the first and second round.
Jordan was swept out a couple of years in the
he got swept
rounds.
Twice by the Celtics. He couldn't get past the bad boy Pistons. It wasn't until the Pistons were the Celtics were old and the Pistons were old.
Well, and Pippen joined him.
Right, yeah, and then Pippen joined the team in the 89 or 90. That they finally were actually able to do anything. So, people always say, 6-0 in the finals, but if you look at it from the grand scheme of things, Jordan had horrible playoff record, before the 90s, and even the early, I think 1990. So, I really just hate the whole narrative of the, he went to the finals 6 times and won 6 times. Good for him, and that's awesome. But I think people seem to pave over the potholes that is the bad years of Michael Jordan.
And there's a good chance in 40 years they might be doing the same thing for LeBron. But he's currently first in points. I mean, statistically, I don't have them all up in front of me, but when you look at rebounds, assists, steals, I mean, he's going to eventually finish top 5, if not top 3, and if not first in many of those playoff statistical categories. The guy has made it to 7 straight NBA finals, which is absurd. It's something that hasn't been done since those Laker teams back in the day. Well, and James Jones, of course, but it's I don't think it's going to hurt his legacy if they lost to a team that is as good and dominant as Golden State has and added Kevin Durant to it this year. I think if anything, this series more could benefit LeBron James in that if he wins and this Cavaliers team wins and defeats this Warriors team, then you look at it and you're like, man, LeBron James is a very good basketball player. And like you said, Kyle, now that there's this serious consideration that could take place that says, hey, he dominated this Warriors team that people just thought were juggernauts. So I think,
but I'm also pretty sure that all of Jordan's finals wins, I'm pretty sure the Bulls were the favorites in all 6 of those trips, and that's not the same for LeBron's
LeBron has only
titles.
been a favorite, I think, twice. I
think once. I think it was only he was a favorite with the Mavericks, lost. They were not a favorite against the Spurs and lost.
I think they were favored against the Thunder though as well.
No,
when they
I don't
won.
think they were. I'll look. I don't think they were.
So that said, while Kyle's looking that up, let's get into our actual predictions. We've talked about the game. We're kind of getting to the end of this podcast here. Before we get that, I just want to I went back and listened to the previous our NBA preview podcast that we did back in December, which was obviously probably about 4.5 weeks into the NBA season. And Haddix, I'll start with you. Couple things. Your prediction was Warriors Spurs out of the Western Conference, and Cavs and Raptors. So you had 3 out of the 4 teams. Of course, I don't think a lot of people saw Boston doing what they did this year, and the Raptors kind of faltered a little bit. And that said, you picked obviously the Cavs and the Warriors to match up, and you put the Cavs in 6. So how do you feel about that prediction now as we're staring the, days away, and by the time this podcast lists, Game 1 will have air. We're currently doing this before Game 1 happens. So how do you feel?
I honestly, and maybe it's me hedging my bets here. If you gave me $1 million and I had to bet, I think I would change it to Warriors in 6.
Ooh, there you go.
So I'm going to switch it to Warriors in 6, and that's again, maybe that's me hedging my bets. And I want the Cavs to win. I want to be wrong, but then that way, if the Warriors do win, I can at least say I was right. So,
all right. Before we get over to Hougie, I want to also mention everyone had a bold prediction. Haddix, your bold prediction: Chris Bosh gets signed by a team, and more importantly, your bolder prediction was it was the Cleveland Cavaliers that would sign him. that one did not pay off so well.
That seems such a long time ago.
It's bold, bold move, Cotton, or was it bold? Whatever.
So nice try there.
All right,
we'll see where you're at there. Hougie, we'll move over to you. You had the Warriors Spurs as well. You also said possibly the Clippers. Of course, we know that what happened with them, and Blake going down for the year. So tough go at their run in the playoffs. And then you had the Cavs and Bulls out of the East, which you and I debated. I thought I said I could see the Bulls finishing with like an 8 seed, and I could see the Cavs and Bulls as a 1 versus 8, which nearly happened. But that said, you, of course, picked the Cavs and the Warriors to have a rematch, and you picked the Warriors in 6. So how do you feel about that? And what's your prediction there?
I still want to stick with my Warriors and the Warriors in 6. I think at full power, I'm pretty sure the Cavs can at least come out with 2 wins. But like I said, it's tough. It is really tough to putting money down on it to say that the Cavs take it just because of how much better talent-wise the Warriors have become this year. And also to go back on, the Thunder were favored to beat the Heat. They actually had the better regular season record. They had home court advantage for that year.
All right, so that one, the Thunder were favored. But there was another one that the Heat were favored in, though.
It might have been one of the Spurs. Might have been one of the Spurs matchups.
Real quick, Kaiser, before you get into your prediction and then wrap this up, I meant to throw in there that article I was talking, or that gentleman I was talking about earlier. His prediction was Warriors. He thinks the Warriors will win 4-0, but he's going to give the Cavs 1. Warriors win 4-1. That was his prediction.
Oh wow, interesting. So I actually expected Kyle to go Warriors in 5 again, like he did last year, and we know how that one turned out. That said, before I give mine and discuss mine, Hougie, your bold prediction was that the league MVP is not on the Cavs or the Warriors, and that league MVP will not be playing for an NBA title. So unless LeBron James wins, it looks like you're correct on that prediction there.
That's an easy. I feel like that was an easy one, just because when you have so many good players on the Warriors, it's tough to have a standout year when everybody's doing well.
Right, absolutely. As for me, I picked the Cavs and Raptors, but I added that it doesn't matter who the Cavs play; they'll just walk their way into the finals, which pretty much happened. And then I picked the Warriors, and I trailed off on discussing who the Warriors were going to play, and ended up just ignoring it and started talking that it's basically going to be Cavs Warriors for the next few years, which I still feel good about. And at the time, I picked Cavs in 7, much like last year's finals ended. That said, I'm going to take the Warriors in 7 at this point. I do think the Cavs are going to push it to 7, but can we get lightning to strike twice? I don't know. So I'm flopping. Haddix, you and I are both flopping right now.
Yep.
And as for my bold predictions, much like the Chris Bosh going to be signed by the Cavs, mine was that the Lakers would make the playoffs this year. They finished second to last in the Western Conference standings, and they have the number 2 overall pick, so feel pretty good about that. And
Just
I also
barely missed it.
My other bold prediction was that LeBron James would win the MVP, to which Kyle said, no, but I could see him making it his goal to get Kyrie the MVP. So a little off there on that as well. But hey, that's what we're here for. We give you guys the pseudo end of the nerd when it comes to discussing and breaking down the sports. So take it for what it is. And as always, reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter. Give us your thoughts. Who do you think we have winning this finals? What are the matchups you're looking for? What is your thoughts? Who do you like in this? And ultimately, who's going to take it, as we have the third matchup in a row, the Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. Tune in, as always, to our show every Friday. And, if the Cavaliers win it, maybe we'll have another championship podcast that was so successful last year. And don't forget, Kyle, you've got yourself a pseudo stream every Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday, 6:30 Pacific time?
Yep.
All right. And look forward next week to our pseudo short, as we will be previewing the summer blockbusters we're most looking forward to at the movie theaters. From the Great Lakes to the Golden Gate, I'm Josh Kaiser, he is Josh Haddix, and he is Kyle Hoagland, and we will see you guys next time.
Have a good Friday.
See ya.